Welcome to another installment of your Activate Symposium, where we are helping you activate the genius within. Today's conversation will really interest you if you are curious at all about how to actually talk to the people who are around you about what you do in business in hopes to get more referrals. Today's conversation is all about networking with your sphere of influence so that you can activate your zone of genius. To help me have this conversation, I have the most amazing group of people to help me. You may be familiar with some of them. My first guest is Colleen Struve, who is the follow-up fortune finder. And she is a networking expert with Connect, Develop, Succeed. And we also have Marilyn Robinson, who is the life navigation expert who can help you really get that enjoyable life's journey on the way. But the last person who's supposed to be on this is you. You are here watching. So if you are watching this as a replay or as someone who's watching it live with us currently, feel free to join the conversation by putting your comments in the chat, and we will make sure that they get on screen and address them lickety split. All right, with that, let's dive into this awesome topic today. First of all, ladies, how are you guys doing today?
Good.
Well,
it's actually warming up here on the East Coast.
I know we have a bit of a delay with Marilyn. So Marilyn, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I got a lot done already this morning, and we have been so hot. I'm wearing some flip-flops.
Exactly. Well, so much for the sunny Southern California, the sunny California weather, right? Actual weather happens up north. So with that, let's dive into the sphere of influence. And I'd like to kind of first start with the definition of what is a sphere of influence in the first place. I know this is a topic that some people may throw around in business topics when they're talking about networking, and some say center of influence. Some say sphere of influence or circle of influence. But Colleen, can you help us really understand what exactly is a sphere of influence?
Well, in my follow-up program, how I define it is those people around you that can support you in your business and your life. So, I look at it from, you have the whole world out here, then you have your community, and then the next inner layer I look at as the sphere of influence. So that's those people who know you, they're connected to you, but you haven't taken it to the level of maybe a power partner or a customer yet. But they're there that you can help. They can help you build your business. So a lot of us do networking groups. So I look at it the way I define it is the people who are in my immediate chapter are my power partners. But the people who are part of the organization, like in other chapters, this could even be like people who are in Rotary or Lions clubs, your immediate chapter are your closer people. But those people who are part of the organization, I look at those as my sphere of influence. So somebody that you can tap into their knowledge, tap into their network, is really how I define it.
Yeah. Marilyn, did you want to add to that definition of sphere of influence? What does a sphere of influence mean to you?
So I definitely agree with everything that Colleen said. I would add that if you had a question or you wanted information or you wanted to get feedback on something, your sphere of influence are those people you'd go to and ask. So they're first in mind. You could also say, depending on have your phone set up, you could say only put it important people in your phone. That's another sphere of influence. But again, it's the people that you think of first to go to, or your close sphere of influence.
Yeah, when I kind of think of my sphere of influence, I kind of like that definition that you were saying about like the first people that come to mind is probably your sphere of influence. I've never really thought about it that way, but it's so true, right? Like when you're like, I need a realtor, right? The very first person, or maybe the first 2 or 3 people that you think about when you when someone says that are probably the people who are in your sphere of influence. That's a great way to define it, and I love that. As a networker, Colleen, that you talk about, like the people who are immediately in your chapter are power partners, because you guys are already committed to referring each other. But it's those people who are just outside of that, maybe in the same organization, but from a different chapter. They're a bit more like a sphere of influence. That's really cool. So, a lot of times when we're talking about networking, most people think immediately, I'm going to go to a networking event, I'm going to meet some people, going to get their cards, and that's me networking. So, why is the sphere of influence important to consider when you're thinking about all the different places that you are networking? And I'll start with Marilyn this time.
Well, again, the key and the journey in life is to get to know people. It's to really relate and build rapport. So if you're going to, go out and network, the purpose should be to connect. Not the number of cards you go home with, it's the number of close connections that you've made. So in other words, you to a variety of people, and oh man, I just am energized being around that person. I want them to be in my circle of influence. And then you kind of have that conversation that leads that direction, that you want to follow up with them and connect and see wherever it goes, whatever you about, take it to the next level. Getting cards and it being a numbers game. The reality is that quality is better than quantity. So away with 5 good connections versus 15, you're going to be better off.
Yeah, absolutely. Colleen, did you want to expand on why your sphere of influence is even an area that we should focus on when we're building our network?
Yeah, I'll follow up with what Marilyn says. We talked about it. It's don't be a collector of cards, be a collector of relationships, right? And when you're out there networking, you only have limited time, right? So everyone can't be part of your sphere, right? They might be part of your community, but they're not part of that next inner circle, because you really need to have time to build those relationships, really figure out like how you both can support each other from that. And like Marilyn was saying, is like when you need something, that's the person you're going to think of. So you need to build that relationship so that you have that know, like, trust, and remember factor when you're out there. So
yeah, the interesting part about sphere of influence is a lot of the times we don't actually think of them when we are starting a new product, or we're about to launch something. We kind of think of like, okay, who are the customers out there? And so we kind of neglect this sphere of influence space. And I tell the story all the time that, like, yeah, I have to explain to my mother what I do, like every time I talk to her, because I do a horrible job of explaining to her what I do, right? And so what is, I guess, when we're looking at this concept of the sphere of influence, how can we really activate their zone of genius when we are working in our business, so that they actually can become power partners with us in that sphere space, as opposed to just people we know who know we work, but aren't exactly sure what we do or how we do it. How can we really kind of tap into that? And Colleen, I'm coming right back to you.
yeah, I think it's looking at like you said, their zone of genius, and figuring out like how can I support them, come from a place of support, and really figuring out, okay, how can I support them, and then that will naturally help you understand, is like, oh well, if I sort of support them in this way, then that will turn into a way that they could support you. So I think it's really tapping into the idea of like looking like Monica's being, we talk about her, the genius of being able to figure out what someone's zone of genius is. And it's like, oh, well, really understanding them and having that conversation, really building the relationship, have the conversation with them. So, because sometimes I know there's a lot of us, in the past, it's like, maybe we don't know what they're, they don't even know it. Right. And a lot of times people can see in you what you can't see in yourself, because something that comes very natural to you, which is your zone of genius, you don't see it anymore because it's such a natural piece of you, right? You almost have to sometimes have that outside person looking at it and helping you understand that.
So Marilyn, as a life journey navigator, what are some ways that you can kind of like, navigate us through this maze? I'm sure you've had quite a few different spheres of influence along your path, being a wise one and all. Like, what are some ways that we can actually do what Colleen is saying, which is kind of like, coming from that place of contribution and supporting other people?
Well, I think the key thing that came to both of you were talking was it's the skill of asking questions. You can really help somebody. Go back to your story, Monica, and you say, "Well, I'm not really describing it, my business well to my mother. She still doesn't know what I do." Well, someone in a conversation with you could ask you some questions to get you to articulate clearly what it is you do. And the thing is that by asking questions, you can also help an individual, because you may come up in your question may surface some kind of great idea that the person didn't think about, or stimulate them to choose word what it is they're working on and how they help people, finding words, new phrases, new ways to do it. So I think a lot of the is I'm always coaching. So in asking questions, I'm also trying to help open doors for them. And if they say something, I always joke and glad I could help. It was like, oh, that's a great idea. And it's like, oh, I'm so able to help today.
Yeah, that's for sure. I know one of the I guess things is I don't want to necessarily be a bother, and there's probably other people who are out there who are talking to their sphere of influence, right? Like, these aren't business people. These are just people who are part of my kid's soccer team that I see on Saturdays or whatever. And you don't want to be salesy or pitchy to your or spammy to your family, but you also probably should be mentioning that. So I'm gonna leave it with you, Marilyn. Is there besides asking questions, is there other ways that we can bring up what we do for a living in those interactions?
Well, I think one thing that came to mind was, because man, I have been that soccer mom along the field, and so what I deal with clients is them managing their time, prioritizing their personal life over their career. We've been programmed, uh, domesticated in society of what we should do with our life. And when you get into your 60s, wisdom that's not true. You don't have to do it that way. but you can't convince somebody that's 40, even 50, that they don't have to do it that way, even though they've been programmed to live life that way. Um, so one of the things that's fun is to be able to talk to somebody and ask them a question about. In my case, I'm a life coach, so asking them if they have, describe to me your day. If you had a day off from all that you do, how would you? And then get them talking about it, ask a few questions, but then lead them to the discussion that says, this is to hear what you would do, and that's what I do for a living. I get to let people dream about what they would do with a day off, and then help them actually get that day off and go
Yeah,
do it.
Colleen, I know you really help people find the fortune in their follow up. and I've been a part of your program, the Fall in Love with Follow Up Experience, and I know you talk a little bit about your CDS technique. And so, what are some CDS techniques that you have for kind of connecting with your sphere of influence in order to kind of have them be a participant in getting referrals for you in supporting
Right.
you in your business?
Well, I've got tack on kind of the last question. We were talking about ways you can do it. So one of the things is show up, right? So I don't know about you guys, but you know, on Facebook, you're putting on social media, like, if I'm at a networking event, I put that there. If I'm speaking, if I'm doing events like this, you're putting it out there. And I've gone to family events and they're like, oh my goodness, you're doing so much. So all over. And I'm like, they've never commented, never know, but people are watching, right? So just realize that, you need to put yourself out there, be visible. So because people are watching and you just don't know when they're watching. And that's one way of kind of helping pull them into the conversation without even knowing that they're in the conversation. Right. And then just stay top of mind. Like I use, one of the tools I use is, to send actual physical greeting cards out. So I do that to stay top of mind with my sphere of influence. And I make them funny. Like St. Patrick's Day is coming up. So I'll probably do a St. Patrick's Day. I'm so lucky that you're in my world. Right. So, or, Valentine's Day, it was like, oh, you're the heart of my business. Right. So do things that keep you top of mind, but aren't salesy, right? So this is you're just providing value. They get it. I hear tons of people are like, when they see me, like they don't necessarily, some people have called me and say, oh my God, thank you for such a cute card, but normally it's when they see you at some other event, they're like, oh, I really like that one. And when COVID first started happening, the card, I sent a big card out, says you're muted, right? Because everybody, that was the big thing, is like, you're muted. So that was the biggest hit, it's like, and I sent it, and then somebody else, picked up on it, and they said, so we all sent these cards out there, people that they're muted, and it was just fun. And every time they picked it up, you just had that, you became top of mind, right? So, so just fun things to do to stay connected with your, people that you're doing.
Yeah, I love this concept of fun in business because I think a lot of times we try to take ourselves so incredibly serious in business. We want people to respect
Been
us and
there,
we want
done that.
to be the true business person and for them to really take us seriously. But it sounds as though that actually being more personable and more relatable and more like not ordinary, but like down to earth and
Real.
humble is real,
Real.
is the right way to go, especially when you're talking to people who are in your sphere of influence. Now, when we were talking about the defining the sphere of influence, I'm curious, where are some places that you guys have actually curated your sphere of influence from that might be the most random random places? Like, where have you met people who have become a part of your sphere of influence that you would have never kind of expected that kind of connection to be? And it's a free for all. So, okay, Marilyn, go for it.
The car wash.
The car wash.
I went to one of those fancies where they, totally deck out your car. They, and I was sitting out in the sun, on a bowl, and started talking to his out there, and met a few people that stayed. He went ahead and said, "Oh, we got to stay in touch." So we exchanged phone numbers, and one of them is a close friend and also has taken advantage of some of my programs. So she's been a real gem. But yeah, that was my weirdest one. The car wash.
The car wash.
I also do a lot of volunteer work. Kind of typical. I'd rather go volunteer someplace than to a networking event because people are more just be themselves and talk about what's going on in life at a volunteer event. And first, it seems like everybody goes to a networking event and it's like that speed dating. where you have 3 minutes to talk and ask your questions before you move on to this person. And that's kind of how I feel about a lot of the networking events.
Yeah, I can see that. When giving single people advice on how to find their spouse, I always say, go do the stuff that you love to do, and you'll find your spouse there. They'll be your people because they're doing the same thing that you love. And that's how I met my husband, was at a networking event. So that's very interesting. Colleen, what about you? What is the strangest place that you've added someone to your sphere of influence?
I don't know. I have to think because like my comfort zone is at a networking event, so that's typically where like I go where like in say when you get into different things, they say, oh, well, go to the grocery store or go to the mall and talk to people walking by. I'm like, oh, that doesn't sound fun at all for me, in that sense. But so networking is kind of where I like, that's where I shine, because I kind of know that people are there, kind of like you were saying, Mike, is like people are there to make connections, right? So at least I know that they're doing that. But I guess the one thing is, so in one of the companies that I was at, we had a conference, and I stepped out of my comfort zone and shared a house. I normally would share like rooms, like we would normally get 4 people to a room. But I usually at least kind of knew the person. But I was invited to go to, it was an Airbnb, and there was going to be 15 of us sharing this Airbnb house. And I really didn't know anyone in the house. And it was like, like I knew they all did the same kind of thing. So I'm like, okay, and I'm usually really easygoing with, people. So I really didn't have a problem, but it was just like stepping out of that comfort zone a little bit. But oh my God, just that experience. And it just, all the stars aligned, and all the people, like normally you would think if you get 15 females in a house that there would be drama. And there was like no drama. And I'm like, how does that happen? Right. I mean, there was like no drama. And I'm like, wow. And, so those people now are like the people that I ask all the time. And it's just not business. It's like, oh my God, this is happening, or that's happening in your life, or how do you guys do this? So it like evolved to that next level. So sometimes I think your sphere may, kind of like people change, right? It's like, they might start in one circle, but then they become closer friends. So they're not necessarily power partners, because they kind of do very similar things I do, but they're like new best friend, a friend in the sense of, somebody that you can really ask questions about your business, and, kind of like we do at the co-working stuff. It's like, these are people that, you come together and now are just like, even, I don't know, what's the good word for that? We have to come up with a new word for that.
All I know is like we're inseparable at this point.
Yeah, I don't know what it's more than just your tribe, right? It's your inner circle, piece, your appendages.
We'll definitely have to coin some sort of space. What's funny is as I asked you guys this question, I started thinking about like, wait, where's the weirdest place that I've met someone? And believe it or not, twice I've met people on wine tasting tours. Who twice. Once in Mexico, I went on a cruise and I did the wine tasting excursion in Mexico, and we were pretty drunk by the end and best friends by the time the end of it, but we stayed in touch, and we had lived not that far from each other in Los Angeles, and so that was really cool. And then also when my husband and I went on his birthday trip up north to San Francisco, and we got a recommendation you should go visit this obscure winery. And we were like, okay. So we extended our trip for a day and went to this winery and met an amazing guy who we still are in touch with to this day. So yeah, there's some, and also, you know what? Now there's a theme. One of our friends we met at a wine tasting festival here in Los Angeles, and they became friends after that. We have a picture of all of us like cheersing at this first wine festival, and we, have stayed friends and have been referral partners for years. So maybe there's a thing about wine in me and influence. But
I just saw here they have wine and cookie tasting. So when you come
Wine and
visit.
cookie tasting?
Yeah, yeah, it's a fancy cookie bakery now, and they're pairing wine and cookie or wine and beer. And I'm like, okay.
That's weird because it seems like the taste would be conflicting, but maybe they sell port and that's what it is. So I'll take it.
There's a
Yeah.
lot
So,
of wine with chocolate.
Hmm.
oh yeah, one of the ones that we were trying at that festival was Tabasco chocolate. So it had like hot sauce in it. And they had
Oh
put
wow.
themselves right next to a port wine tasting booth. And so they were like, yeah, our chocolate's really good with their wine. And there was like this whole
Back and forth, yeah.
back and forth. They were like, our wine's really good with their chocolate. So there was like this, they were kind of using each other as influence in some ways. Um, a sphere of influence in some ways so that we could there we go. So we could, she's back in line. So we could actually support each other in their businesses. All right. Are you good, Marilyn?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay,
I got so
perfect. I just
excited
wanted to
about
make
the
sure the
wine
sound was still there.
chocolate. Phone and it's a tripod.
You got junk
Like
just
what?
off of talking about wine. That's hilarious. All right. So we are, we've kind of went all over the map about this sphere of influence thing. We've talked about how it's important for our own zone of genius to kind of tap into our sphere of influence as well as the zone of genius for our network. So and we've kind of talked about some ways to really tap in there. Um, what is the what are the ways that we can take our current sphere of influence and really activate them to just be true supporters of ours. I know during COVID, it's been an interesting kind of space in that we've talked to some people, we haven't talked to others, and we definitely haven't been able to see a lot of people in person. But now that we're kind of navigating through this next phase of hybrid living where it's more outdoors and less indoors, how can we start kind of reactivating our sphere of influence and getting things going again? And we'll start with Colleen this one.
I think some of the things you can do is actually plan events. So whether you want to, like a wine tasting event, right? You can make it a trip, right? So you can do, plan event where you get people together that are your sphere, and then start to build that relationship. Or I think you were mentioning where the two people were going back and forth and they were promoting each other. That's another great way to support your sphere of influences, is find out what they're doing and see how you can support them, and that's a way to kind of build that relationship.
Oh, I love that. I do think it's harder for us sometimes to do that we think it's harder than it really is. Marilyn, what do you think? What are some ways that we can reactivate our sphere of influence now that we're going into a more not so virtual world?
Yeah. Well, and I'm necessarily one to want to plan the events, but I'll go to events. So I have been reaching out to people, that maybe it's been a year, 2 years since I talked to them, and kind of reconnecting to see what they're doing now. Some of them, I mean, there's so many that have moved over the last couple of years with COVID. And so, catching up with what they're doing. If there's, some way of, if they offer that they've got, up they're working on or whatever, I definitely asked to be on it, to participate and support them. But, in general, it's just trying to find out where they're at and how they're doing, and reconnecting on, like I said, it's in some cases a couple of years. I am fortunate that a lot of my influence follows me on Facebook. So I stay connected with them that way. even comments on a regular basis, but reactions. I sometimes say, "Hey, thanks for supporting my post. What have you been up to?" And when you start off the news, an opener to ask, "What fun stuff do you have planned this year? You got any trips you're going to take, or on?"
Yeah, I'm glad you kind of bring up social media, because in a lot of the times when um, we're talking about our sphere of influence and networking and connecting, we sometimes leave social media out of the equation of that networking component. And I know in Colleen's program, the Fall in Love with Follow Up Experience, she actually walks through us, connecting on different social posts and social media platforms. And the one specifically that we look at in that program is for the sphere of influence is your personal Facebook page. So what are some fun ways that you can kind of like engage people on your personal Facebook page that gets the conversation started? I kind of feel like that's probably what we want more of, right? We want like engaging interactions that are not contentious and like not politically driven, right? Like that seems like the only thing that gets people fired up. But what are some fun things that you've seen that got your sphere of influence kind of engaging with you on your social media posts? Marilyn, I'll go back to you since you brought it up. We'll start with you and then head over to Colleen after.
So I'm having so much fun. The sad part is I lost my sister in November, but in that process of create a video slide deck for her celebration, all these little pictures are coming up, and oh my gosh, it's so hilarious. So I try once a week, maybe days, I find one and I post it. And like this one was loved this outfit. But the fun part is two of my very close friends had the exact same, different print. And we had a picture of us. So hilarious. And it was back when I was in my early 20s. And I said, okay, which one am I? And there were a couple of people that got it wrong. Most of them got it right. But that's kind of what I do. It's like, oh my gosh, look, I'll crack me up. And then, I had some people comment and say, what year was that? And I go, I'm going to have to really, backtrack and say, I'm going to guess it was 1983, but that I've been having fun doing that most recently because it's just, it's, I'm laughing at these and, they're crazy pictures. I one of my sister and my sister who isn't on Facebook, she'd be dying because she's sticking her tongue out in the picture, and she'd be like, "Why'd you post that one?" But yeah, that's been the funnest one lately because they get to see me when I was young,
right?
Then, back when I
I love that because it really brings forward that I'm a real person. There's like a 360 view of who I am. It's not just who you know me as right now, but like some of the other expressions of who I am as well. Really cool. Colleen, what about you? What's some fun posts that you suggest for your sphere of influence to kind of get engaged with you on your Facebook page?
Yeah, I think Marilyn nailed the whole, put your life out there, because people want to do business with people they know, and they want to feel like they know you. And I'm definitely one that doesn't do well, this is my personal only stuff and this is my business stuff. I can't keep all that stuff straight. So I'm like, you get what you get. So you're going to get, posting of me in a gym over the weekend watching, my son coach wrestling and different things, trips or things we're doing at the house. So those type of things, and polls, like a lot of, if you're looking like to engage people, to ask like like weird questions, like do you like the one that you hear a lot is like, put it on there, Brussels sprouts, yes or no, and people will
Yes.
easily
Yes
comment.
to the Brussels sprouts. I'm commenting now. Yes to Brussels sprouts.
I was gonna say, like, Wayne is like, no anymore. I'm like, yes. So, but yeah, and it gets people engaging, and then you can, continue the conversation. Like you can start like, like what's your, Star Wars, Star Trek, right? You'll get be able to, and you'll see people and then stuff, and especially like do you golf, right, or something like that, so that you can then engage people with a conversation. Then you gather information, right? Which is not in a bad way, but you get more information to build that relationship. So if you see somebody's like, oh yeah, they love to play golf, or they love to swim, or whatever, now oh, well, I could introduce them to this person who also likes to do that. Like we were talking with, finding people who do similar things that you like to do. So
Oh yeah, my social media has always been a hybrid personal business, and there's two separate teams, right? Team keep it personal and like don't let anybody else in business on there, and then team share your life, because that makes you a normal person. And I think to each his own, right? If you're uncomfortable, but what I will say is I never post anything that wouldn't be appropriate for people to see in business in general, right? I'm never going to put anybody's, information out there, or like, rant about my husband on there,
that's for our
anything.
inner circle groups.
Right, that's for your tribe, right? But like, social media and your like ability to kind of broadcast what's happening to you should kind of have those levels of security, kind of like the government, right? Like are you classified to have this kind of information or not? And so I love that you guys are both team, put it out there, because it's more fun, which is why we're friends. This is why they're part of my inner circle, is because they're like, if you ain't got nothing to hide, why hide it, right? So I love that. And so for those of you who are watching this or are watching the playbacks, just know that you at any time can control the narrative on your social media. And the only thing people know is what you post. And so if you're cognizant about what you're posting and you're comfortable and okay with that posting, those personal tidbits, then for sure, definitely share it. I know I don't share private pictures from private events that I am attending, right? Because that's their personal choice to put their stuff out there. But if I'm in a more public experience, or I know their social media people, and they're going to want to tag, pictures with the tags in it, then I'll do that as well. So, just having that little bit of discretion and respect. This has been such a fun conversation. I'm so excited I get to spend some time with you guys today talking about this. Did you want to add something, Colleen? I think you were trying to.
I was just saying with that, like I took a picture of my kid who's 26, so he's older and stuff. But then my nephew, won the tournament. He's in high school. And I started to take a picture. I'm like, well, I'm not connected with them. And so I decided not to do it. I just sent it to her and let them figure it, if they wanted to post it. Because like you said, you take, be aware of other people and how much they want to put out there. So
Absolutely. Marilyn, did you want to add anything?
So I just wanted to say, now, didn't we take a sphere of influence, sounded kind of boring and scientific and full of fun?
Yeah.
Yes. For sure.
We want our sphere to all be fun.
That's kind of how we roll in the Mink Life community, right? We are all about like taking these topics that could be kind of boring and turning them into fun topics, because truthfully, people are more fun than we think, and the topics are actually more fun than we think. We just have to give ourselves the space to actually do that. I am so honored and excited to be doing this symposium with people that I love and respect so much. And so I want to kind of thank my two co-hosts here for having this conversation with me out loud about sphere of influence. I want to give you an opportunity to give your last thoughts on sphere of influence. What's the one message, if you can send it out there to the world, about sphere of influence that you want to share? What would that be? And I'm going to start with Marilyn first.
Okay, so one of the key things, it's very, very important as you get into your last phase of life and your last third, that you need those connections. People, throughout our life, we meet a lot of people and they come and go. Being able to hang on to and communicate and keep in touch with those ones that really resonate with you are going to increase how much joy and happiness you have in the last phase of your life.
Awesome. Colleen?
Stay top of mind with the people who you want to be in your sphere. So if they're just be cognizant that you don't need to have everyone who's around you. So if there's someone that maybe their energy isn't aligning with what you do, it's okay that they're not part of that inner sphere that you have. So it's okay. Like Marilyn was saying, some people come in for a little bit, they stay. Some people just come in and then leave because they don't need it to be there for a short time. So just make sure that you surround yourself with amazing people.
Yes. And last but not least, I want to say that you are the center of your own universe, and you are the common denominator between every person that you personally know. So remember that you actually have the power to harness your influence for good. So be kind, be compassionate, and really be loving with the people around you, so that they can continue to share the love from you and pass that on as a ripple effect to others. With that, that brings us to the end of our conversation. I can't believe we're here and it's all over. Oh my gosh, I'm so sad because I love talking to my girls, especially live, where everybody else can see how our conversations were so awesome. If you've enjoyed this, well, guess what? This has been brought to you today by the Grand Connections. Yes, connect, create, and collaborate, and take yourself to your next grand expression. All right. And we are, of course, Mink Life Motivation with Mink Life University. And we are here to help you activate your zone of genius, not only for yourself, but for your entire sphere. And remember that it's so, so, so important for you to understand that we are real people offering real help in real time in our community. And if you need some help or you want to be supported by this community of amazing, amazing people who have expertise from various directions of the world and various industries and cover different topics in life, business, branding, and networking, then you definitely want to come and hang out with us in our community. We would love to have you in there. We're waiting with our arms open wide for you to come and hang out with us. So we will see you on the flip side. It has been a blast. And we will see you starting Sunday when we have our next roundtable on life. See you soon. Bye.